Shun Asanaga, a high school student, exhibits an insatiable curiosity for archaeology, particularly garden quartz, and always makes a mandatory stop at the nearby stone shop before heading to school. He lives a happy life with his mother, Makiko Asanaga, who used to be an archaeologist, and his father, Kazunobu Asanaga, who is a scientist, but is often too busy to spend time with his family. On the day of his father's birthday, Shun arranges a small celebration with his mother, but his father is a no-show as usual. Disappointed but undeterred, Shun decides to visit his father's research center and bring him to the party. Upon reaching the lab and finding it empty, Shun stumbles upon a magnificent blue crystal in his father's office that immediately catches his attention. As he approaches it, a bright light emanates from the crystal and transports him to a strange new world. Meanwhile, in the alternative world of Endora, a young Prince Emilio is attempting to kill King Delzyne to avenge his father, whom he believes was dethroned and killed by Delzyne. However, as Emilio tries to strike, Delzyne wakes up just in time and catches him off guard. The two engage in a fierce battle with their warp relics, but Delzyne has the upper hand due to his superior fighting tactics. Rather than killing Emilio, Delzyne chooses to teach him to become stronger before facing him again. He ultimately sends Emilio to the dungeon prison, much to the young prince's dismay. As Emilio languishes in his prison cell, Shun suddenly appears, stepping out of the blue crystal. He is unaware of anything that has happened to him and is immediately confronted by the kingdom guards who have appeared there. Shun tries to escape, but the guards attempt to capture him. With no other option left, Shun unknowingly activates his warp relic, which suddenly emerges from within his body. He uses the relic to break open Emilio's prison cell and easily defeats the guards with a single blow. The two of them then make their escape from the castle. However, their freedom is short-lived as they soon come across Ibelda, a member of the Zuzan community who works for King Delzyne. Despite Emilio's royal status, Ibelda is under orders to capture him and bring him back to Delzyne. Seeing Shun as Emilio's support, Ibelda moves to attack him as well. Shun's warp relic once again emerges from within him, granting him the power to battle Ibelda. With the relic's help, Shun is able to hold his own against Ibelda, even as Emilio struggles to keep up. As Ibelda gains the upper hand in the fight, his attack makes Emilio and Shun fall into a nearby water stream. Emilio, who is familiar with the castle's layout, knows of a secret sewerage passage that he uses to take them to safety. He drags Shun along the passage until they reach a hidden exit, emerging in a secluded area outside the castle walls. Here, Emilio explains to Shun that he hails from the surface world and is transported to this strange place by the blue crystal. He also reveals that he was trying to attack Delzyne because he believes the king is responsible for his father's death. As they make their way through the safe passage, Emilio and Shun come across Emilio's friend Alicia and her dragon pet, Valerian, who approaches there intending to help Emilio in his escape. After successfully escaping from the castle, Emilio, Shun, and Alicia must find a suitable hideout to stay safe. Emilio decides to seek refuge with his old acquaintance and instructor Pascal, a former kingdom researcher. Shun, who has nowhere else to go and is being chased by kingdom guards, has no choice but to follow Emilio, the rude prince who he does not get along with. However, news of Emilio's escape and Shun's involvement in using his warp relic reaches Delzyne, who knows about Emilio's connection with Pascal and sends his guards to capture them. Meanwhile, while walking in the jungle, the group encounters a wild boar who suddenly appears there. Emilio, with his warp relic and Valerian, Alicia's dragon pet, immediately engages in battle against the boar. Just as the group believes they have won the battle, another boar appears out of nowhere and charges towards Shun. Instinctively, his warp relic emerges from his body, allowing him to cut off the boar's horn and kill it with a single blow. Shun is surprised by his sudden ability to summon the warp relic, but he has little time to dwell on it as they get trapped in a boar's capturing trap. Pascal appears and reunites with Emilio, freeing Shun and Alicia and taking them to his hideout. Once there, the shocking truth of Shun's coming from the surface leaves Pascal in disbelief. Pascal goes on to explain that Endora is located deep beneath the Earth's surface, hidden from the people of the Earth to prevent religious conflicts. He tells the group that there was once a gate called Babel in the Endora city of Babylon, through which people could travel from the surface to Endora, but it was destroyed a long time ago. King Delzyne, however, is currently working on rebuilding the Babel Gate for his own unknown purposes. Pascal is further shocked to learn that Shun is able to generate a warp relic despite coming from the surface, something that only the people of Endora are supposed to be capable of. Shun demonstrates his ability to summon his warp relic on Pascal's request and learns that not everyone in Endora possesses a warp relic in the same form. Alicia, for instance, has a warp relic in the form of her dragon pet, Valerian. He further reveals that warp relics are actually a manifestation of a type of energy in Endora known as warp particles, transformed into weapons. Once Shun learns about the location of Endora and the gate to travel to the surface, he becomes determined to go to Babylon. However, Emilio and Alicia are hesitant as Babylon is quite far away from their current location. As they discuss their next move, Pascal remembers how he was ousted from the research lab by King Delzine after refusing to rebuild the Babel Gate. In the midst of their conversation, Delzine's guards suddenly attack Pascal's hideout in an attempt to capture Emilio and Shun. Thankfully, the group manages to flee using Pascal's self-constructed plane. As the plane lands on a new island, Pascal leads Emilio and others to his hidden laboratory, which he often uses during his adventures. While spending some alone time, Emilio probes Pascal about the strange world that emerged from the crystal, from where Shun mysteriously appeared. Meanwhile, Shun's love for archaeology leads him to explore the Endora rocks, where he recalls the theory of life in Earth Hollow from ancient books, where Endora was referred to as Shambhala. As they converse, Pascal discloses that Endora was labeled a hellish place by Earth people to keep them away, but some knew of its existence and called it Shambhala. Pascal also unravels the mysterious restoration of Babel decades ago, and now the king desires to restore it, while Pascal opposes it. Consequently, he left the castle and now decides to destroy Babel after sending Shun back. As a warm gesture, he then hands over his royal sword to Emilio, wanting him to share the reason that led him to prison. After disguising himself to collect some goods, Pascal heads towards a nearby village, instructing Emilio and the others to meet him in Megiddo village the following morning if he does not return on time. However, Emilio has different plans in mind. As Alicia is not around, he decides to run away to save Pascal from any potential trouble he may face by being associated with Emilio. He persuades Shun to join him by suggesting that they overthrow the king to prevent him from approaching Babel, which could potentially block Shun's return to Earth. In order to return home, Shun agrees to run away with Emilio and kill Delzine. That night, after Alicia dozes off, Shun and Emilio flee, but instead of heading straight to the kingdom to take down the king, Emilio decides to gather reinforcements to bolster their efforts. The reinforcements that Emilio is seeking are from the Ignots, another community in Endora that has a hostile relationship with King Delzine. Emilio strides confidently into the lair of Ignots, introducing himself to the group's leader, Demetrio, and his comrades. But his boldness quickly dissipates as he finds himself under intense scrutiny from the hardened rebels, who demand to know why he has come to them so suddenly. Emilio comes clean. He wants to kill Delzine, and he's come to the Ignots seeking their help. Though the group shares his desire to eliminate their common enemy, Demetrio is understandably cautious. He challenges Emilio to prove his mettle in battle before they agree to join forces. Undeterred, Emilio summons his powerful warp relic and launches a fierce attack on Demetrio. But the rebel leader proves to be a master of close combat, effortlessly disarming Emilio with a swift flick of his blade. In a show of solidarity, Shun summons his own warp relic and charges forward to aid Emilio, only to fall prey to the Ignots' cunning traps. Despite their initial skepticism, the Ignots ultimately agree to assist Emilio in his quest to take down Delzine with one important caveat. They will only support him if they deem him fit to become the next king. Meanwhile, Pascal visits an old research friend who now runs a bakery shop. He inquires about the recent progress of the royal research team in reconstructing Babel. Luckily, Pascal learns that the researchers are still looking for a solution to the problem that he left before leaving the castle. However, Pascal's shock increases when he discovers that Emilio is on the run after committing a heinous crime, trying to kill his father, Delzine. To get on good terms with Emilio and Shun, Ignatus take them to their camp and assign them the task of laundry work due to their beginner status. While washing clothes at the river's site, Shun converses with Eldria, a member of Ignots. Also, just to be clear, this good-looking fellow is a dude and a clumsy one at it. Eldria falls into the water and gains a glimpse of Shun's future. Unlike others, Eldria doesn't possess good fighting skills but can see the future of any person. After seeing Shun's future, Eldria informs him that he will return to Earth one day. However, what he doesn't reveal to Shun is the look of astonishment and tension on his face during the future glimpse. Elsewhere, Alicia and Pascal, who recently returned from his visit, notice Emilio and Shun's prolonged absence. They decide to fly to Babylon to find them, believing that the two might have traveled there without them. Later that night, they share their concerns about the king's guards considering an alliance with Zuzians. The news upsets both Shun and Emilio, and they discuss their worries about the situation. While receiving medical aid from Louise, she enlightens them about the Zuzians, telling them about Lucio, a Zuzian who had a friendship with Demetrio. But a nobleman killed Lucio, which made Demetrio angry. During a conversation, Emilio expresses his concerns about the partnership with the Zusians, while Shun just wants to go back home. The next day, Shun talks to Eldria about his future, but fails to get a clear answer. While strolling in the forest, Shun comes across Ibelda, who is on a mission to capture Emilio and Shun. Ibelda immediately attacks Shun in rage, but Emilio arrives on time to save him. However, they are no match for Ibelda, but Shun's warp relic evolves, allowing him to fight alongside Emilio and leave a brutal scar on Ibelda's chest, causing him to flee. Meanwhile, Demetrio engages in a battle against Ghidorah while the other Ignats fight against Ibelda's comrades. As the fight continues, a bright light appears across the mountains, catching Emilio and Shun's attention. Emilio and Shun run into angry Alicia and Pascal, who just approaches there in their search. There they also get to meet Ignats, who greet Pascal and Alice warmly. Later that night, Pascal confronts Emilio for attempting to kill his father and advises him to seek the truth, but Emilio remains determined to continue his mission. Alicia warns Shun about the dangers of Ignats and remembers her childhood memories with Emilio after seeing him in the forest. Meanwhile, Shun decides to join Demetrio and his squad heading towards Babylon. Demetrio warns him about the dangers, but they all agree to go together, as even the king is heading there to restart the passage from Endora to Earth. In this struggle, Louise is still happy to reunite with Alicia. While in the forest with Emilio and Shun, Felix expresses his hatred towards the king because of the miserable childhood he suffered. The next day, after everyone finalizes their destination, they all prepare to embark on their journey towards Babylon. As the group makes their way towards Babylon, they pass by a beautiful canal that catches Shun's attention, and he is excited by its beauty. However, before reaching Babylon, the Ignats decide to stop by Zusian Island to ask for their help in their mission, but to get there, they must wait overnight for a ship in the morning. They decide to spend the night in the biggest port city of Endora, where Pascal suggests that Emilio and Shun buy some warm clothes. While shopping, a little boy steals Emilio's sword, but they follow him and find out that the boy and his siblings are hungry. Alicia feeds them and they continue on their way. Suddenly, they are attacked by a little girl who wants to kill Emilio, but he is saved on time by Eldria, who arrives there with Demetrio. To rescue the prince, Demetrio engages in a fight with the little girl and copes with her bomb attacks, but his attacks seem useless on her because of her sharp moves. However, after some struggle, Demetrio manages to capture her. Eldria reveals to Emilio and Shun that she is an orphan who was sold in the black market and forced to become an assassin after her warp relic was snatched in her childhood. Demetrio fights with the assassin Misha, who is wearing a collar that forces her to commit crimes. By freeing her from her collar, Demetrio offers her to join them, to which she happily agrees. That night, Emilio discusses his ignorance about poverty with Pascal, and the next day, Pascal goes to the royal laboratory while the others continue their journey towards Babylon. The following morning, the group takes the ship to Zusian Island, where they plan to talk to Zusians for their assistance. On the ship, Misha and Felix engage in a practice battle, but when Felix draws his warp relic, Louise stops them by praising Misha for fighting skillfully against Felix. Just then, a storm comes into the ocean, resulting in their shattered landing on Zusian land, where they find themselves surrounded by them. Demetrio speaks to the chief of Zusians, Gradido, for his assistance, but the chief simply refuses to help them. Louise, being a Zusian herself, also tries to convince, but in vain. However, the chief offers Demetrio to give his own life to get assistance. When Demetrio agrees but his friends oppose, Zusians want to kill them. By seeing Ignats and Prince helping each other as friends, choosing each other's life over theirs, Chief decides to trust them and spare their lives. He talks to Demetrio regarding the assistance he wants in his mission of taking down the king. In a room, all others are thinking about gaining the trust of Zusians, while Chief Gradido offers Demetrio a drink in the restaurant and agrees to help him. Later, Emilio talks to Shun along the riverside and asks about his surface place. After receiving assistance from Gradido, the group sets off towards Babylon aboard the Zusians' advanced ship. Before their departure, Gradido also lends them a whistle that calls bluebirds for communication in case they need to call for Zusian assistance. As they journey on, they come across a mountain that they must climb. While climbing, Alicia expresses her concerns to Shun about Emilio's thirst for revenge. Later, as they lie in their tent, Shun questions Emilio about his ability to kill Delzine, the man who raised him after his father's death. Emilio remains resolute, convinced that Delzine murdered his birth father to gain the throne. The next day, while trekking through the snow, the group is astounded to come across the footprint of a dragon. Eldria accidentally falls into the footprint, and the rest of the group follows Falarian to search for him. They soon find themselves face to face with a dragon. The group tries to save themselves from a dragon attack, but just as the dragon has the upper hand on them, To their surprise, Felarian transforms into a massive fire dragon to shield the group from harm. They are able to defeat the snow dragon, and Felarian reveals a startling truth. He is actually Alicia's father's soul, who chose to remain by her side after his death in the form of her warp relic, Felarian. He also informs Alicia that the dragons pose no threat to them, as they are merely trying to defend their offspring from their attacks. Through Eldria's efforts, the group establishes a positive relationship with the dragons, who offer to transport them across the mountains towards Babylon. Thanks to their newfound alliance, they are able to continue on their journey. The dragons depart away by dropping the group on the other side of the mountains. Reaching there, Shun only expresses his desire to return home soon. Later, while gathered around a fire, the group discusses Delzyne and his motives. Suddenly, Eldria faints and has another vision of the future. This time, it is the destruction of Endora which alarms everyone. Meanwhile, in the laboratory, Pascal discusses warp particles with another young researcher, Joseph. Later that night, Emilio assures Shun that he will make it home soon, which relaxes his nerves somehow. The following day, Demetrio's friend informs the group about their allies with the lords of surrounding areas that do not support King Delzyne, while all the time, Loius appears suspicious about something. As Pascal conducts further research, he becomes increasingly worried about the loss of warp particles. He visits Joseph's secret laboratory and immediately takes off in Joseph's plane towards Babylon. Meanwhile, King Delzyne arrives in Babylon and orders the Babel door to be opened to the surface. Fortunately, Ignatz and the rest of the group arrive in time to prevent him from carrying out his plan. Upon arriving at the Great Babylon, the group is faced with the challenge of finding the correct entrance to reach the Babel Gate. With the help of Eldria's intuition and an old map passed down from his ancestors, they manage to locate the correct entrance in one of the pillars. As they enter the labyrinth, they are faced with the daunting task of climbing massive stone walls in order to reach Babel. During the climb, Demetrio reveals to Emilio that he does not intend to assist him in killing Delzyne, as he believes negotiation is the key to their revolution. He has gathered an army not to overthrow the king, but to demand proper rights for Zuzians and resolve the poverty in Endora. However, Emilio remains determined to carry out his plan to assassinate Delzyne. Despite the challenges, the group eventually crosses the walls, only to find themselves confronted by King Delzyne's loyal Zuzians. Ibelda is quick to attack Emilio, but Eldria summons his warp relic to stop him in time. In the midst of the battles, Demetrio and Godoro are engaged in a fierce sword fight, exchanging severe blows. However, both warriors manage to stand their ground. Meanwhile, Felix and Misha fight against Biopetal and Vestals, with Felix summoning his warp relic just in time to cause Biopetal severe injury. As the battles continue, Ibelda confronts Emilio and Shun, seeking revenge for the scar they left on him. He releases a fierce attack, which prompts Emilio to engage in a one-on-one battle against him. However, Ibelda's strength overwhelms Emilio, and he is thrown to the ground. In a moment of desperation, Emilio's warp relic evolves, allowing him to stand up against Ibelda. Eldria also uses his warp relic to save Emilio and Shun from Ibelda's attack. As Emilio, Shun, and Alicia continue moving on the route to reach Babel before the king, Eldria stays behind to hold off Ibelda and prevent him from following them. As Eldria tries to halt Ibelda's advance, his warp relic is suddenly destroyed by none other than Louise, who unveils her true identity as a Zuzian that betrayed Ignatz out of loyalty to Ibelda and her fellow Zuzians. Demetrio, having already known Louise's true identity, confronts her and warns her about her actions. Despite this, Louise engages Demetrio in combat, but he refuses to harm his former comrade. Meanwhile, just before entering the gate to Babel, Shun confides in Emilio that he too will not assist in Delzyne's murder, urging Emilio to reconsider his choices. Emilio, disregarding Shun's advice, throws him aside and proceeds to enter the gate, where he finds Delzyne already present there. As Emilio and Delzyne engage in a heated battle, Felix and Misha pursue Ibelda, who is following Emilio and Shun. In the midst of the fight, Louise's resolve begins to falter, and she seeks refuge with Demetrio again. Meanwhile, Ibelda discovers that Biopetal and Vestals are wounded, but instead of helping his friends, he prefers killing them so they won't stop him from killing Emilio. Suddenly, Godoro appears on the scene, and Ibelda launches a surprise attack on him, leaving him severely injured. The scientists announce that the gate to Babel has opened, but Emilio refuses to let Delzyne escape without facing the consequences of his actions. As the two engage in an intense battle, Shun intervenes and demands that Delzyne explain why he killed Emilio's biological father. Before Delzyne can answer, Ibelda emerges and attacks Delzyne, only to kill him on the spot, leaping into the gateway to Babel. The gateway then seals shut, with Ibelda disappearing inside it. Emilio is left in tears as he watches Delzyne pass away, despite harboring a long-standing desire for revenge. Joseph and Pascal examine the place and decide to work in the royal laboratory in order to work on reopening Babel to send Shun back to the surface, but they are out of plain fuel, so they must go along with others to get out of Babylon. Later, Emilio admits to feeling unhappy even after achieving revenge. He wonders if he was wrong about Delzyne and should have listened to his friends. Shun offers words of comfort, and they reminisce about their past battles. Demetrio and his friends discuss the problems in the city caused by Delzyne's death, while Pascal and Joseph investigate the Babel, but are unsure about Ibelda's entry on the surface because of some blocking. Demetrio and his friends accept Loius and decide to help the people, while Emilio also requests to join Ignatz. Along with Pascal and Joseph, they are all get ready to go to the capital to get information about Babel and help the suffering people. Reaching the capital, the group witness crime everywhere. The local lord captures the villagers, but they are rescued by Demetrio and his squad on time. As a gesture of gratitude, an elderly villager serves them a meal, and they discuss the riots occurring in Endora after the king's death. The defeated lord is enraged but is suddenly killed by a Zuzian. It is revealed that this Zuzian is Ibelda, who, after entering Babel, never resurfaced and instead transformed into an evil monster with half of his body stained with dark magic. Ibelda engages in a brutal battle, attempting to kill Demetrio, but is stopped in time by Godoro. Godoro, seeking revenge for his comrade's deaths, attacks Ibelda, causing him an injury that makes him flee with a promise to return someday. After Ibelda disappears and Godoro has no purpose following the king's death, Demetrio invites him to join the fight against evil. Godoro warmly agrees and becomes a valued ally in their battle against crime. Pascal and Joseph unveil the truth that the exit to the surface is entirely blocked, and that is the reason behind Ibelda's monstrous transformation. They also reveal the continuous decline in Endora's warp particles over recent years. Pascal confides in Emilio, revealing that Delzyne's only desire was to meet someone on the surface with genuine intentions. He then promises to assist Emilio in uncovering the truth about Delzyne and his real father's death. Following Demetrio's orders, Gradido departs for the north while Emilio, Shun, and Demetrio head towards the capital to quell the riots. The group then proceed to the castle that is empty after King's death. However, reaching there, it reveals to them that half of the soldiers never returned from King's pilgrimage, while the remaining are hoping for the prince's eventual return. To find the reason behind Endora's decrease in warp particles as well as Babel's opening, Joseph and Pascal meet Ronnie in the Royal Research Lab, who is Pascal's senior, but is no more a scientist now. Instead, run a bread shop. Ronnie brings the news of the attack on the castle by some unknown creature in the surrounding jungle. To battle the creatures, Royal Army, in Emilio's lead, as well as Zuzins and Ignatz, prepares for the fight to secure the castle. Later, they find out that Ibelda is behind those creatures. However, he gets injured during the fight and disappears along with his creatures. In an effort to end Ibelda's reign of terror once and for all, Godoro, Felix, Misha, and Louise, along with some reinforcements, set out after him. Meanwhile, Pascal and Joseph uncover a harsh truth. Endora's warp particles are decreasing rapidly, and if left unchecked, it could lead to the complete destruction of Endora. They are determined to discover the root cause of this sudden decrease. Emilio takes Shun to the spot where he first appeared, but both accidentally fall into a great hole. To their surprise, they meet a prisoner named Frama, who was once the leader of Truculent, working for the king. Frama reveals that he is imprisoned because a scientist from the surface manipulated Emilio's father, King Alzurm, and Delzyne's elder brother into his schemes. Upon learning that Shun is also from the surface, Frama attacks him, but a blue stone suddenly appears and transports Shun and Emilio to the surface. After arriving on the surface, Shun takes Emilio to his house, where they are welcomed by his mother, Makiko. Shun then leads Emilio to his father's laboratory, where they reveal everything about Endora to him. Asanaga assures Emilio that he will help him return to Endora soon. As Emilio talks to Asanaga, a blurred memory flashes in his mind, but it soon becomes clear to him. He recalls that it was Asanaga who had come to Endora from the surface and tricked King Alzurm into stealing the warp particles for his research, using advanced technology as bait. It also becomes clear that Shun is actually Delzyne's son, whom Asanaga had stolen from him after his own son's miscarriage. This revelation shocks both Emilio and Shun. It becomes evident to them that this was the reason why Delzyne wanted to travel to the surface and reopen Babel. Asanaga opens fire on Emilio, but he manages to escape from his office with Shun, who is still reeling from the shocking truth about his father. Meanwhile, a vivid flashback takes us on a journey to a different reality where Asanaga, while conducting research on a blue stone discovered by his wife, finds himself in a strange world called Endora. There, he is warmly welcomed by King Alzurm and his younger brother, Delzyne. However, Asanaga's intentions are far from pure. He plans to steal Endora's warp particles, a treasure for his research and the betterment of humanity, by luring the king with advanced surface technology. In a tragic turn of events, Asanaga decides to steal Delzine's sick child after feeling sad about his wife's miscarriage. He strikes a deal with the king to restore Babel, so he can take the child to the surface for treatment and show Alzurm the surface world. But after reviving Babel, Asanaga betrays the king and kills him with fire. As Shun and Emilio arrive home, Mikiko also confirms the reality of Shun from Endora. This revelation leaves Shun's heart in shambles after witnessing the dark side of his father. In the meantime, word of Emilio and Shun's disappearance in the castle's dungeon quickly spreads throughout Endora, causing concern and worry for their friends and allies. As the search for the missing duo intensifies, rumors and theories abound about what could have happened to them. Meanwhile, Emilio and Shun have arrived at Asanaga's old workshop, hoping to get some answers about their mission to stop the theft of the Endora warp particles. It is here that they discover the true nature of Perrin Blue, a device embedded in Asanaga's heart. Perrin Blue is actually a stone that serves as a gateway between Endora and the surface world, allowing for the movement of people and objects between the two realms. With this newfound knowledge, Emilio and Shun realize that they may have a way to continue their mission despite the setbacks and dangers they have faced. During the discussion of Perrin Blue and Endora, Joseph shocks everyone by revealing that the device is powered by an impulse to the heart. This knowledge deepens the mystery surrounding the device and its connection to Endora. Asanaga, determined to carry out his mission to improve humanity at any cost, attempts to convince Shun to join his cause. However, Shun remains steadfast in his refusal, unwilling to risk the lives of those on Endora for the sake of the surface world. In a desperate move, Asanaga pulls out a gun and aims it at Shun and Emilio, causing Shun to scream in agony. The intense pain triggers Perrin Blue to function, transporting them back to Endora in an instant. In the midst of the raging battle between Ibelda and his former Zuzing comrades, as well as the Ignats, Shun and Emilio appear from the sky in the thick of it. However, unbeknownst to them, Ibelda holds a grudge against them and is eager to exact revenge for the scars they left on him. Spotting Shun and Emilio, Ibelda charges towards them, and the two friends brace themselves for the attack. With everyone engaged in the battle, Ibelda summons a horde of monstrous creatures to aid him in his quest for vengeance. However, when Godoro steps forward to take on Ibelda, things take a turn for the worse. In a stroke of bad luck, Ibelda captures Godoro and his stained arm, leaving him unable to move or fight. Determined to free Godoro from Ibelda's grip, Shun and Emilio join forces to take on the monstrous foe. Their combined efforts finally break through Ibelda's monstrous arm, releasing Godoro from his grasp. However, the release comes at a high cost, leaving Ibelda to feel immense pain. But just when everyone thinks the battle is over, Ibelda undergoes a transformation, turning into a giant monster. With his attack, Ibelda unleashes a wave of destruction, leaving a trail of devastation on Felix and Louise in his wake. As Eldria struggles to concentrate and understand the flow of Endora, the effort takes a toll on him, causing him immense pain. Despite his struggles, Eldria manages to uncover the secrets of the Endora warp particles and their connection to Terna Nog Tower, which is located far away in the sea. However, the exertion leaves him severely weakened, forcing his companions to rush him to the hospital. Meanwhile, Felix and Louise are also brought to the hospital after suffering injuries from Ibelda's attack. It is there that the group discovers Eldria's revelation about Terna Nog Tower. With Pascal's knowledge, they realize that Terna Nog is a legendary place that has remained unseen and unheard of until now. But as Shun and Emilio arrive, Shun drops a bombshell. Terna Nog is not just a story. It's a real place where Endora warp particles are being stolen and taken to the surface for selfish purposes. To everyone's shock, he also claims that Shun's father is the one responsible for the theft. The revelation leaves the group with no choice but to quickly make their way to Terna Nog to confront Shun's father and put an end to the stealing of Endora warp particles. Alicia is left in a state of shock after hearing the full story of Shun and the disclosure about his father's involvement in stealing Endora warp particles. Despite her fear and worry, she makes Emilio promise to return safely from their mission to Terna Nog. Determined to put a stop to the theft of the particles, Pascal, Shun, and Emilio set out on the Falarian. However, in the middle of their flight, they are ambushed by Ibelda and his monstrous hands, which leaves Pascal with no choice but to detonate a bomb to free the Falarian from Ibelda's grasp. While the explosion saves their lives, it causes Pascal to plummet towards the ground. Pascal's daring act leads others to embark on the Terna Nog tour, but unfortunately, his fall from Falarian leaves Ignatius and his comrades in dismay. In response, Demetrio dispatches Joseph and Ralph to search for Pascal. Prior to embarking on their search, Joseph hands over Pascal's handmade bomb to Demetrio, which is designed to destroy any target when its button is pressed. Meanwhile, despite sustaining several injuries, Felix is determined to help Demetrio in the battle, but Louise manages to convince him to rest as he is still not well enough. After a safe escape, Shun and Emilio finally arrive at the Tir na Nog Tower, where they are awestruck by the science fiction technology and the blue crystal embedded in the center of the tower. This crystal is responsible for draining all of Endora's warp particles. In an effort to save Endora, Shun and Emilio try to break the crystal together by striking it hard with their warp relics. However, the crystal remains intact and proves to be unbreakable. Undaunted, Shun comes up with a smart idea to break the crystal by striking it from the top with a powerful blow. Just as they are about to break the crystal, strands of a strange warp relic suddenly appear, blocking their path. They follow the strands of light to their source, and to their surprise, they find Asanaga waiting for them. Asanaga tries to convince Shun to join his side, but Shun refuses, unwilling to sacrifice Endora for his father's research purposes. As the battle against the giant Ibelda rages on, Hudoro attempts to use Pascal's bomb to defeat the monstrous creature. Despite his efforts, he ends up sacrificing himself and detonating the bomb inside Ibelda, finally putting an end to its destruction. Meanwhile, on Tir na Nog Tower, Asanaga's true nature is revealed as he confesses to stealing a strange warp relic from Alzurm after killing him. This confession angers Emilio, but before he can take action, Asanaga's warp relic strands attack Falarian, leaving the creature severely injured. Asanaga then turns his attention to Emilio and his own son, Shun, who refuses to support his father's despicable actions of stealing Endora's warp particles. As Shun witnesses the severely wounded Falarian, a surge of rage consumes him towards his father, Asanaga. He pledges to Emilio to help him take down his father to ensure the safety of their friends. Together, they engage in a fierce battle against Asanaga with their warp relics. However, despite their best efforts, they stand no chance against Asanaga's powerful weapon. Emilio falls to the ground, impaled by a strand of Asanaga's pointed warp relic. Asanaga's desire to kill him, just like his own father, fuels Emilio's anger and causes his warp relic to evolve even further. With renewed determination, Emilio continues to fight Asanaga, exchanging several blows with his warp relic. However, despite his efforts, Emilio is captured by Asanaga, who continues to deliver brutal blows, leaving Emilio injured and on his knees. Shun is filled with intrigue and moves forward to stop his father, but he is met with the intimidating presence of Asanaga's warp relic. Fueled by rage, Shun's warp relic evolves in response. He joins the fight against his father, unleashing a flurry of attacks against Asanaga's warp relic. The battle rages on, and the outcome remains uncertain. With the power of his evolved warp relic coursing through him and a seething bulk of hatred for his father in his heart, Shun launches a fierce attack that breaks one of his father's warp relic strands, leaving him shocked. His father, Asanaga, responds by throwing Emilio aside and lunging towards Shun with murderous intent, but at the last moment, his love for his son stops his hand. In a fit of rage, Emilio charges towards Asanaga with his own recently evolved warp relic, which evolves further with the help of Falarian and strikes Asanaga, killing him. Shun is saddened by his father's death, but he chooses not to dwell on it due to his father's evil nature. Suddenly, Tir na Nog starts to crumble, causing Shun and Emilio to dangle perilously from a broken building. Fortunately, Falarian swoops in to save them and brings them back to the castle, where they are welcomed with open arms by Alicia, Pascal, who was rescued by Joseph and Ralph, and the rest of the gang, who were anxiously waiting for their safe return. After the dust settles from their recent battle, Pascal decides to shift his focus away from ancient history and instead directs his efforts towards researching warp particles for the brighter future of Endora. As the next king of Endora, Emilio expresses his gratitude towards Demetrio and Ignatz, but also apologizes to Alicia for causing her worry. Demetrio, impressed by the skills and worth of Emilio as a king, praises him as well as Shun and assigns tasks to all of the Ignatz to carry out their peace mission. In honor of reviving Endora's peace, a grand celebration is held in the castle. However, soon after, Shun confides in Emilio about his plan to return to the surface to be with his mother, who was left alone after the death of his father. Emilio wishes that Shun would stay in Endora, but understands his reasons for leaving. Shun bids his final farewell and departs for the surface, where he destroys the stone to prevent anyone else from approaching Endora and disrupting its newfound peace. Years pass, and even though everything is settled down, the same stone that Shun destroyed is revived in an intact form by an unknown person. No one knows who this mysterious individual is or what his intentions are, but there is a lingering sense of unease about what the future holds for Endora. The end.